Guys, good Tuesday afternoon. Welcome to the I Love CVille Show. My name is Jerry Miller. It's good to be with you on a gorgeous day to be alive. We are alive in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. We're presented by Ting Fiber Internet. Crazy fast internet, Ting Fiber Internet. We have it at the best price possible, only through ilovecville.ting.com. ilovecville.ting.com for the best internet used to power this very network. Yona Smith, welcome to the broadcast. Let us know if that beautiful granddaughter has been born, Yona. Yona's watching Connecticut right now with her daughter and son-in-law expecting grandchild number 2. They already have a grandson. This will be the first granddaughter for my friends, Keith and Yona Smith. A lot to cover on the program. Alex Urpí is going to join us. Alex Urpí and his father, Xavier, are the stars of Today y Mañana, a show that airs at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille Network. The mission of the show is to spotlight and champion the Hispanic community across Charlottesville and Central Virginia. We'll have a good conversation with Alex on what he's planning for his show on Thursday. Folks, the Hispanic and Latin community, not only in Charlottesville and Central Virginia, but in communities across America, have been hit the hardest when it comes to COVID-19 and this pandemic. We'll have frank and very real conversations with Alex today on the show, in particular how the community in Charlottesville and across Central Virginia is managing a pandemic that no one planned for. It's easy to think about it from what's right in front of our face standpoint. But if we can take a broader picture, we can determine how a pandemic has impacted not only communities of means, and much of Charlottesville is an affluent community and a community of resources and means and money. But it's paramount that we consider our communities that are living on the margin or are impoverished and need our help. Okay, so we'll have a frank conversation with Alex today on the program. I think the lead of today's show, though, has got to be restaurants. An article released by the National Restaurant Association. Judah, if we can get that on screen. I'm going to offer some statistics for you, and then I'm going to make it local. First, let's go macro. Okay, and then we'll go local restaurants in Charlottesville and Scottsville and around. Okay, so let's get some metrics to you so you can learn, we can all get educated here. The National Restaurant Association said restaurant and food service sales were $240 billion with a B, $240 billion with a B, below 2020 pre-pandemic forecasts. I'm going to put what I just said in layman's terms. The National Restaurant Association predicted before COVID hit America that restaurants in our country would do $220 billion with a B more dollars than they actually did this past year. Let that sink in. The freaking forecast was off $220 billion because of COVID-19. Let that sink in, please. Here's another statistic. Serious stuff here. More than 110,000 eating and drinking establishments have closed in America in 2020. I'm going to relay that again. More than 110,000 eating and drinking establishments have closed in 2020. The association hopes 2021 will be a rebuilding year, but openly admits revenue and jobs coming back will take years to return to form. So those are the macro statistics that I want to relay to you. I'm about to localize it here on the I Love CVille Network. Cliff notes, recap, put a ribbon on the macro. National Restaurant Association, revenue in 2020 was $240 billion with a B, below forecast because of COVID. 110,000 restaurant establishments have closed since COVID. 110,000, that's across the country. Let's talk Charlottesville, Virginia. Big time closures that come immediately to mind in Charlottesville, Virginia. Downtown Grill. Wild Wing Cafe. Zinburger. Immediately coming to mind. Big time closures in the Charlottesville Downtown Mall. Charlottesville in totality. Let's take it a little step further. Remember CiCi's Pizza? CiCi's Pizza was in one of those shopping centers on Route 29. I get them confused. Was it either Albemarle Square or the Seminole Shopping Center? Which one was it? Somebody help me out by putting it in the feed. I get those two confused. Albemarle Square, is that where ACAC is located? I believe that's Albemarle Square, right? CiCi's Pizza, when it was in Charlottesville, Virginia, was it Seminole Shopping Center or Albemarle Square? Somebody help me. I get those confused. CiCi's Pizza's filed for bankruptcy. Get it on screen, Judah Wickower. CiCi's Pizza, the buffet restaurant that had other buffet items besides pizza, now filed for bankruptcy. CiCi's has debt between $50 and $100 million in assets between $10 and $50 million. That's not good. CiCi's has 318 locations across 26 states. In 2010, it had more than 650 restaurants. Think about that. How many in Charlottesville or who are watching this program have enjoyed a meal with family and friends at CiCi's Pizza, either Albemarle Square or Seminole Square Shopping Center? Remember when it was open? Here's the question I have for you. Are you ready? How can a buffet-style restaurant model survive in COVID? Take it a step further. Who misses the brunch buffets? And remember the brunch buffets like at Boar's Head or at the Omni or at a place that specialized in weekend brunch? Can you go to the studio camera, please, Judah Wickower? Studio camera, please. Studio camera, please. Remember the brunch buffets that were super dope, that had the mountain of bacon, where you had like a bacon stand, and there was this fantastic pile, mountain high of fresh cut bacon. Or the brunch buffets where you had like the seafood platter out for the brunch buffet, and you had a bunch of seafood on ice, and you were able to cherry pick like some shrimp or some crab or some lobster and put it on the plate. The make your own omelet. Remember the make your own omelet station at buffets? My friends, will the brunch buffet ever return? Will the brunch buffet be a thing of reality in the F&B space ever again? Did COVID murder the brunch buffet? Let's take it a step further. Okay? Who loves going to Mas Tapas? You know what? The first date I ever had in Charlottesville, Virginia, with my wife, was at Mas Tapas. It was a double date. After we did a limousine wine tour, one of our clients, Camryn Limousine, we did a limousine wine tour of 5 different vineyards, came back to my house, took an Uber to Mas Tapas, and did a double date at Mas Tapas where we were sharing small plates around. The whole table was sharing small plates. You had some bacon-wrapped dates. You had those tomatoes asados. You had the bocadillos, those little ham sandwiches. You had those papas, those potatoes that they do in that cast iron skillet. And we were just sharing them around. The reason I'm relaying this story to you is, do we think that the small plates, the share your tapas business model concept can survive COVID? Here, let me cut this bacon wrap date in half and give half to Johnny and half this bocadillo that I touched with my hands to Susie, and let's see if I can impress my wife with some sangria and some half a bacon wrap date and half a bocadillo and put it on her plate. Here you go. Are you impressed? Jerry, there's COVID. What are you doing? So CiCi's Pizza files for bankruptcy. I have memories eating pizza at CiCi's. We can go back to the one shot, J-Dubs. I don't know about you, but I miss the brunch buffet and the mountains of bacon and pork, the piles of bacon, the made-to-order omelet station. And tapas? How about the wing bar? Wild Wing Cafe, what was it known for? That lunch wing buffet? Think about Wild Wing. Wild Wing's business motto was predicated on sports. COVID killed that, at least for a little while. Shut down sports, COVID did. Wild Wing's business model was partially predicated on a wing lunch buffet. COVID's going to impact the wing lunch buffet. Wild Wing's business model was predicated on going for dinner time and ordering a plate of 50 wings and everyone grabbing a wing off the platter with their bare hands. Well, COVID's scaring a lot of people from 50 wing platters enjoyed with friends and strangers, right? Wild Wing's model was predicated on shoulder-to-shoulder interaction at a dope second-floor bar with 3 or 4 bartenders scrambling to take drink orders while the games were on. Well, shoulder-to-shoulder interaction at bars wouldn't happen at Wild Wing, right? Scary numbers. And the thing that is most frustrating about this, before I get to Tavern on the James, before I get to a restaurant building for sale, before I get to Pete Snyder running for governor, we had Pete Snyder on this show in June of 2020. In June of 2020, I straight up said, this was 7 months ago, today a man announced he was running for governor, Peter Snyder. In June of 2020, June 1 of 2020, we had this guy on the show and I straight up said, are you running for governor? Because I knew that's what he was going to do. 7 months later, he made the decision to do it. I'll give you his answer of me asking, are you running for governor 7 months ago on this program? Pete Snyder's the guy behind that fund, that private fund that was allocating money to small and medium-sized businesses all over Virginia, the Mid-Atlantic. They actually formed a joint venture with Barstool. Barstool now has a private fund that's allocating money to small and medium-sized businesses all over America. Pete Snyder and his beautiful wife, they launched their own small 30-day fund. And he was genuinely trying to help small and medium-sized businesses by allocating funds from his 30-day fund to help them survive COVID. Of course, that was also a PR ploy. Of course, it was genuine. I'm not knocking you, Peter, and your efforts by any means. But can you think of a better optics or public relations strategy than using all of COVID in 2020 to launch a 30-day small business fund to support and champion small businesses, and then 7 months after doing that, you announce you're running for governor of Virginia? 7 months ago, he came on this network and I said, Pete, are you running for governor? I got that answer coming up for you in a matter of minutes. Before I get to that answer, before I get to another restaurant building for sale, before I get to the drama, the brouhaha, the beef, the knockdown, drag-out war that's manifesting at Tavern on the James in Scottsville, I want to dot the I's and cross the T's on this. The brunch buffet, the wing buffet, the small plates, the tapas, the shared food that Mas Tapas and Little Star on West Main specialize in. The platters of stuff that people grab and share while watching a game. It's going to take a while for that to come back. A while for that to come back. And we better very quickly watch restaurants closing and the jobs that are tied to these restaurants that are closing, because these jobs are often the few employment opportunities for a demographic that we need in our community to keep the community diverse. The last thing you want is a community where, and you see this in a lot of different nooks up and down the East Coast, West Coast. You see communities where it's just a group of rich people and people come into the community to work and service the people that live there. That's not what we want. We want a community where all walks of life can afford to live in one place. We don't want one walk of life living in one place and then all the other walks of life driving to it to service that first walk of life. That's not what we want. Now, let's talk restaurant building for sale, yet another one. If you are looking to start a restaurant or start a restaurant and buy the property and then launch a restaurant in the property you buy, essentially creating two businesses. The first business, you own the real estate, you create an LLC to protect your personal assets, and that LLC is the owner of the real estate. The second business, you create a restaurant. The restaurant has its own LLC. I like single member S corporations personally. And that second LLC rents from the first LLC. Then you own two businesses. If you are opening a restaurant or thinking about opening a restaurant or thinking about buying a piece of property and then opening a restaurant, I cannot think of a better time than absolutely right now. And everyone's going to be watching this, going to be like, oh, come on. Who's going to freaking start a restaurant right now? Come on. Guys, it's going to take you a little while to negotiate the lease. It's going to take you a little while to build the brand. It's going to take you a little while to build the space out. You're not going to get more leverage or negotiation opportunity with landlords than you have right now. Landlords are begging people to take their open storefronts, literally pleading and begging. You can get something for 60 cents on the dollar of what it was February 2020. So you'll never have a better opportunity from a lease standpoint. You'll never have a better opportunity from a purchase standpoint if you want to buy the actual building. There's one in Scottsville that's on the market right now. Thank you to Trevor, who watches this program all the time, for sending me this link. Trevor Daniel, I got nothing but love for you and your family. And happy birthday, Mona Daniel. You got three very intelligent and handsome sons, that Daniel family. He sends me this link. Do you have it on screen? Get it on screen, Judah Wickower, director of the program. Tavern on the James, the building is for sale. And this is a dope building. Have you guys been in this building? It is a dope building. It's got a second floor, a first floor. It's right in the heart of Scottsville. It's got an awesome deck. It's got a second floor that's made for catering and entertaining or private events. They're asking $1.3 million. Frankly, $1,299,000. Price per square, $337 per square foot with a cap rate of just under 7.4%. I would go in there and start the negotiation off at $1 million, see if you can split the difference. This is a tremendous opportunity for somebody. Arguably the marquee commercial real estate in the heart of Charlottesville, Virginia. The downtown grill space has been for lease with Lee Hughes for months. Months, the downtown grill space has been for lease. Wild Wing Cafe, ready to rock and roll and ready for somebody to have an opportunity to be an entrepreneur. There's no better time right now to launch a restaurant because demand is going to be off the chain in the latter part of the year. When the vaccine is rolled out, people are social butterflies and they're going to be chomping at the bit to go shoulder to shoulder at the bar yet again. Now, it's going to take guts and cojones to make that move. And it's not going to be easy. But $1.3 million asking at a cap rate about 7.39%, this is a deal. This is an opportunity. Talking Tavern on the James. Tavern on the James, pun intended, and I know Spencer's not going to like this, got themselves into some hot water. But Spencer, I'm here to stand up for you, okay? Spencer's he and his wife, Callie Marshall, own Tavern on the James, okay? For some reason, there's like a little ruffle or back and forth in this sleepy Scottsville community with Spencer and Kelly at Tavern on the James, and some folks giving them a hard time. You saw the story, maybe you didn't. There was a feral cat that was camping out outside Tavern on the James. What is the one thing you don't do to a feral cat? There's a few things you don't do to a feral cat. One of the things you don't do to a feral cat, you know what you don't do to a feral cat? Feed it. Feed it. What happens when you feed a feral cat? It keeps coming back like a plague, like athlete's foot when you walk around the locker room without Crocs on. It keeps returning. Tavern on the James tries to get the feral cat from camping out outside the restaurant. It's a feral cat. It's a restaurant. Of course you don't want it outside your restaurant. throw a little water on it to scare it away. Next thing you know, people hyperbolized the water, and it was 180 degrees of scathing hot water thrown from the second floor of Tavern on the James with the intent of murdering the feral cat. They must close the restaurant down. Give me a break. He threw some water to scare the cat away from the entrance of his restaurant. Give the man a break. He spent 11 months trying to survive through COVID and straight up said in Q4 2020 that if we don't start hitting our revenue projections, we got to close the doors. In Scottsville, I'm here to tell you right now, I love coming to Scottsville. I love visiting your town. I love having a beer in the beer garden at James River Brewery. I love getting a Christmas tree at Foxfire Christmas Tree Farm and having a couple of beverages and some wings and some sandwiches after that endeavor with my wife and son at Tavern on the James. I'm here to tell you right now, you start running away small businesses like Tavern on the James, and then the downtown is pretty much going to be left ghost town-esque. Don't do that to those people. All right, let's get the sound from Pete Snyder. Alex Urpí, we will go to you in about 6 minutes on the program. Do you have that ready to go for us, J-Dubs? The Pete Snyder sound?
Yeah.
Okay. We had Pete Snyder on the program. Pete Snyder's running for governor. He made the announcement today. In fact, he sent me a press release. We'll effort Mr. Snyder on the program for either later in the week or next week. I got an email, so did you, Judah. Did you see that email? From the campaign. Long story short, this dude's going to make a push for governor. He came on this program in June of 2020. In June of 2020, when he came on the show, he was talking about the 30-day fund that he and his wife were the foundation of. And the 30-day fund was allocating cash payments to small and medium-sized businesses in need. At the end of a roughly 18 to 19-minute interview with Pete, I straight up asked him, I said, Pete, you're running for governor, man. You know, this is an incredibly philanthropic thing you're doing. This is incredibly altruistic, and this is incredibly, kind. Why are you doing this? You running for governor? Today, Pete makes the announcement that he's going to run for the top elected position in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Listen to his answer to me asking him this question 7 months ago on this network, the I Love CVille Network. Judah Wickower in 3, 2, 1. You're going to run for governor? Virginia wants to know, Pete. You're going to run for governor?
Jerry, politics is the exact last thing on my mind
Good
right
save.
now. I don't give a crap about any of that right now. I just don't, and it's actually a very freeing, wonderful thing when you're not focused on the stupid political machinations of every comma and paragraph, and you're actually just focused on results. I will say that we have had a systems failure at every single level of our system right now. It is mind blowing to me. I've been a long time investor at a company called Ledbury.
Paul Tribble, baby. I know Paul Tribble well. I went to Walsingham Academy and William and Mary. I'm going to ask you about Paul's Deli and the Greenleaf very soon. Pete Snyder. Paul Tribble went to Hampton Roads Academy. He was a rival of ours. I grew up with Paul Tribble. Ask him about Jerry Miller. Ledbury is a legit brand. I love the clothes. I love the company. I love that you got in that company early. You were smart.
Well, Jerry, thank you for that. Paul's a fantastic visionary leader. But I got to tell you, it was heartbreaking on Saturday night, and yesterday was an awful day in the Snyder household. We have been longtime investors in Ledbury. I've been on their board for 8 years. Their storefront was completely obliterated and destroyed in the riots. Their entire Broad Street shop was looted, and all the merchandise taken out of the first floor. What merchandise was left was covered in the blood of looters. I have pictures. It is vile. It is horrible. Look, what I can't understand why people cannot say, those in charge can't say that, what happened in Minnesota is absolutely wrong. We can no longer tolerate having our black citizens murdered by law enforcement. And we cannot tolerate violence in our protests. Protests are an important part of the fabric of America. Hell, we started with it with the Boston Tea Party, right? There was, look, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, I believe in our Second Amendment rights. There was a very peaceful large protest that happened earlier this spring. That, I think the governor sent a message that, oh my gosh, Virginia's going to fall apart. And, you had 60,000 people, not a single arrest in that. There has been just a lack of leadership on how we're allowed to have looting and burning in our cities. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Boston,
we've got to stop this. We've got to stop our law enforcement murdering our own citizens, and we have to stop having violence and destruction when we're protesting things, period.
Well said. Boston Tea Party. You'll see more of Peter, guys, as we head to the 3rd of November. Terry McAuliffe, his clear-cut opponent, Pete Snyder, has been slamming Governor Ralph Northam for piss-poor leadership. And frankly speaking, how the governor has handled the rollout of this vaccination and COVID in general, I think we can make a statement that his leadership has left a lot to be desired, especially someone that's a governor, especially someone that's a doctor, an MD by trade. I don't think he's particularly handled the vaccination and COVID strategy particularly well here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Are we all in agreement there? And to justify the statement I just made, I think we can use the amount of needles that have gotten in people's arms in the Commonwealth to solve this pandemic, or lack thereof, right? A couple other items before we get to Alex Urpí today on the program. BH Media, the company that formerly owned the Daily Progress, we told you last week they are selling the Daily Progress headquarters on Rio Road. They're selling yet another newspaper headquarters. BH Media is selling this one, Judah, and I would expect it's going to be for all their newspapers that they previously owned. They're going to sell these buildings. This one previously the home to the Amherst, New Era, Progress, and the Nelson County Times, 2 weekly newspapers in the town of Amherst. The building is now for sale. So the headquarters of the Nelson County Times has been put on the market for sale by BH Media, Warren Buffett's company, the company that previously owned the Amherst, New Era, Progress, the Nelson County Times, and also the Daily Progress, the Roanoke Times, the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I mean, they own pretty much every paper of merit in the Commonwealth, except for the Daily Press out of Hampton Roads and the Virginia Pilot out of the Beach. Warren Buffett has divested his portfolio of print product ownership. Now Lee Enterprises, the owner of the Daily Progress, and Lee Enterprises will rent a portion of the Rio Road location for its skeleton staff that keeps the Daily Progress together. I'm going to close the newspaper topic with this. My first job out of the University of Virginia was as a newspaper writer for the Daily Progress. I finished my career at the Daily Progress as the youngest editor in the history of the entire newspaper. I have black and white ink in my blood, and there's nothing I would rather do than smear that ink on my fingertips while drinking iced coffee on the back porch on a 70-degree morning while my son is still sleeping and my wife is happy and there's quiet in the Miller house. One of my favorite ways to start the morning. That being said, this business, COVID is put the final nail in the coffin. The print advertising dollars have gone away. The little digital advertising dollars they had have been sprinkled to social media. Better yet, spent on a network like this that's the best allocation of those resources by far. This industry, you give it 18 months? And the crappy part of it is the ones that suffer are the citizens, us, because it's outlets that keep influencers and people who make decisions accountable. It's going to put more pressure on us here at I Love CVille to rise to the occasion. Basketball news, and then Alex Urpí. UVA beat Syracuse last night, and it wasn't even close. This basketball team is peaking yet again at the right time. Dude, I want to ask you this question. I want you to compare Sam Hauser to Joe Harris. Compare Sam Hauser to Joe Harris, who just signed a big-time contract with the Brooklyn Nets. Hauser is 6'8", 218 pounds. Joe Harris, Brooklyn, is 6'6", 220. So Hauser is actually taller than Joe Harris. Joe Harris is a better athlete than Hauser, but Hauser looks like he's got just the purest stroke as Harris. Where Hauser is a potential liability is when they post him up defensively in the paint. He does not have the physicality to defend in the post. But this guy moving off the ball and off screens when Kihei Clark penetrates the paint and he kicks out to open jump shooters like Trey Murphy III and Sam Hauser, who have their feet set behind the arc, this dude is a devastating weapon. And this Virginia basketball team, get the ACC standings on screen, is legitimately an NCAA champion contender. That's a lot of pressure, but they have that kind of talent. And Casey Morsell is a guy that you got to watch out for. He's finally gaining confidence on the offensive end. We have Alex Urpí on the line right here. Alex recently manicured his beard. He's looking very sharp right there. My friend, good afternoon. Did you recently manicure? Did I get it right?
No, I always just to make sure it stays trim. When you're in financial services, you always have to make sure that
everything looks sharp. Yeah. Was it difficult? Was it difficult for you to grow the beard? Were you uncertain about growing it?
I had been told enough times pre-beard days that I would look good with one, so I just went for it one time, and within a week it popped. To be honest, it was more of a struggle not having one than having one.
Yeah, because shaving is the worst. And take it from one Cuban man to another Cuban man. When you have dark hair like us, we may shave at 9 a.m. in the morning, but by 5 p.m. we got stubble and it doesn't even look like we've shaved. Is that your problem?
I had 5 o'clock shadow by like 11 a.m.
Yeah, I know. It's so good. That was hilarious. Xavier would have loved that joke right there. I love Xavier's joke. He would have loved that one. All right, Alex, my friend, the show is yours. All right, serious question for you. Serious question. Real question. Open-ended, anywhere you want to go. We got this COVID-19 thing we're all dealing with here. Give us a spotlight from your friends, the family, the folks you talk to, Hispanic and Latin community. How are we managing here?
It's still a struggle with things being, still closed down. It depends a lot of times on your area. I know the family that we have up in New York struggling much more. They're still under lockdowns, and sometimes lockdowns that don't exactly have consistency or make sense in terms of where the businesses are being shut down and told they can't operate. But even here, the struggle is, as much as we may open things up legally, there's still, I think, a lot of trepidation in terms of people coming out and things getting back to where they were. And just the dichotomy of those who are more easily able to switch over to new ways of selling products. You think of your, takeout, carry out, and those that I think were more traditional. Their clientele was a more traditional type of person that came in and wanted the experience of being there. And it's not always as easy as it looks for those of us on the outside to say, well, just pivot. Congratulations to those who do it, but it's not always as easy as it looks to just pivot, because I think I've seen it here. Just the other day, I was driving around town, and the drive-through line at the Chick-fil-A off on, I think it was on 29, insane. This thing was into the Lowe's parking lot. And it was one of those things that is highlighted to me when people switched, from dine-in to carry-out to take-out, they went to their take-out places. People aren't really saying, oh, well, I went to this Mexican restaurant to sit down, I'm going to go take-out from there. Instead, the switch was, well, I can't sit down anymore, I'm nervous about going to a restaurant, so I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A. Which, God bless them, they're doing well, but it's a large company, it's a large chain.
Yeah, they have cash. They have cash and burn rate.
Say that.
They have cash and burn rate to make changes like that, and they already have the drive-through in place, so they have an inherent market advantage. He's basically saying the small restaurants in this community don't have the resources to make a quick pivot like that and add a drive-through, and you can make a legitimate argument the small restaurants in the Hispanic community may have less resources than even the small restaurants in the restaurant community in Central Virginia in totality.
Oh, absolutely. You're already talking small places space-wise, and just a culture of when people go, they went there in person and they didn't switch over. Because I know, I mean, most of the Hispanic restaurants I know, Latino restaurants, they're doing carryout, they're doing takeout, but people don't often go and take out from there as much as they went to go sit in person. And it's a lot of times it's about changing the mindset to realize when these kinds of things happen, you need to have the local mindset. You need to buy local. And I was just reading an article recently that made like the moral case for this. And in the sense of you want to be involved in your own community. When you buy locally and you're choosing to put your dollars into the Latino business, that's the Latino restaurant. It could be another local store that's selling, stationery, things you could buy elsewhere. You could buy them for a lot less money, made in China and Taiwan and other places from large corporations that are headquartered in the U.S. but are essentially multinational corporations at this point. But when you do that, your dollars are going abroad. You have no longer control over those dollars. And when you do it in the local community, those dollars are coming back. They're growing the Latino business this way. That Latino business owner now becomes a customer of more places. When he gets a new space, well, now he's going to rent from someone in the local community. When he buys more chairs, more tables for his restaurant, he's going to buy them from here. When he hires more people, he's going to hire them here, because it's not a distant chain. It's people here in the community. And there's just such a huge case to be made for that right now. And granted, there's been people that have stepped up and you see people buying locally, but I think it hasn't been as much as I think I would like to see to really help us come out of this COVID period, at least where we were, if not stronger.
Good stuff right there from Alex. He's the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, Emergent Financial Services. His show, along with Xavier, his father, airs Thursdays at 10:15 on the I Love CVille Network. It's called Today y Mañana. You brought this point to me a couple of weeks ago, and I've been thinking about it, ever since. The community, and I remember growing up, my mom's Cuban. We grew up in a culture of closeness and intimacy. We were constantly at Mima and Papi's house. We were constantly at our cousin's house. Mima and Papi often had other family living with them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Oftentimes, the houses that we grew up in Miami and Naples, Florida, were not huge houses, so we often convened together in the kitchen over food and conversation. I'm throwing this out there because this creates tightness in family and love and loyalty, and it really is a testament to the culture in totality that the family is such an important piece. But it's also, from a COVID standpoint, in some ways can be seen as a spreader, and perhaps why COVID has run rapid in the Hispanic demographic. Anywhere you want to go on this topic?
Well, I think that's part of it. I think it also is part of how the jobs that a lot of Hispanics have. I've heard it said, let's be real, the lockdowns are in some ways as necessary as they may be for certain places, certain times. I'm not a doctor, I'm not going to say how necessary they are, but in some ways they are a bit of a luxury of the white-collar worker, in a sense of when you're Hispanic and you're working, a lot of Latinos, we work in industries, restaurants, construction, landscaping, all essential industries. Latinos work in essential industries that don't get shut down. So you're still going to work. And if you're a Latino business owner, you don't have the luxury of saying, well, I think I'll just close and I'll work landscaping virtually for the next 6 months. It doesn't work that way. You don't get to turn your restaurant virtual for 6 months or, contact your clients that you were doing homework for and luxury work for to say, well, now I'm going to just do everything almost the same, but not quite. You don't have that luxury. You have to provide for your family. You're doing the work. And that obviously puts you into more susceptible situations than if you're able to, and I say this as someone in a white-collar industry, I can come to an office that is just my family and meet everyone I need to meet by Zoom. If I was in a different industry, that would not be possible. So I recognize the luxury that I have in being able to do that, and how in some ways that protects me from possible exposure, because I'm meeting clients in a way that's not possible if I wasn't delivering a financial service, if I actually had to deliver a product or a meal or something that required me to do physical work for someone, to make their home a better place, to make it a more beautiful home. And a lot of Latinos, I think, worked in those essential industries that don't have the luxury of saying, well, I'm just going to do it virtual for a year. And sometimes I think we forget that, and we sit there and say, well, why do Latinos have so much more trouble? And I think the same could be said for a lot of the African American population. But why do Latinos have such higher rates of COVID? Well, it's not like we have a Latino COVID gene that makes them more susceptible. It's a combination, I think, of family. I mean, Italy had this struggle, I think, at the beginning of the pandemic too, where you have 3 generations in one household, which is common, and then I think where we work. And so to keep that in mind and saying, how can we, when we're making policy, but also as individuals buying from businesses, how can we make sure that if Latinos are out there taking these risks to make their families and their businesses survive, how can we make sure that it's worth the risk? How can we make sure they're already taking that risk? How can we make sure that their business then grows? So they're not taking this risk needlessly or not being able to provide for their families while taking that risk.
That is phenomenal. Phenomenal take right there from Alex. Phenomenal. Judah, can you cut that into a sizzle reel, please, so we can play that on tomorrow's show, and then we can feature that on our Instagram? That was a phenomenal take right there. How about vaccination? So I was having this conversation, and there's a long history of mistrust when it comes to United States medical innovation and the African American community. Many decades ago, United States scientists were literally injecting diseases into African Americans and using African Americans as guinea pigs to try to figure out a solution to various diseases. As a result, and I've had this conversation on the show a number of times, there's a lot of distrust, especially to innovation in medicine that doesn't have a track record of performance. And the COVID vaccine, we all know, has been rushed to market to help the world. I mean, it has genuine intentions. I'm curious, the vaccination, Latino and the Hispanic community here, the take or the willingness to take the vaccine. Or is there distrust?
That's tough. I think it varies. I mean, Latinos, we come from a lot of different places, and trust of big companies, vaccinations, I think varies depending where you're from. Just as an example, I mean, being a Cuban, if you fled from Cuba or Venezuela or somewhere like that, your trust of government telling you this is okay, do what I say, is going to be very low because that trust has been abused. So it does not surprise me, that you're going to find Latinos I would imagine, for example, Costa Rica, at this point, very well-known country for having a trusted government, having a great ecological system. I think they're the ones that have no military, because they've turned after the last dictatorship, they got rid of that entirely. So if you're from there and you have a lot of trust in your companies, your institutions, you're going to be more comfortable. And if you're from a place where that trust has been broken, coming to the United States isn't going to suddenly erase that level of mistrust and say, well, I can suddenly start taking a vaccine that only had 6 months of data out of the blue again. And I think for me, it always comes down to respect of the person's background and the cost-benefit analysis that they have to take. If you're an older person, 75 plus, 80 plus, your risk of dying from COVID is much higher than other people. So my suspicion is there are going to be a lot of people that say, I'll take the vaccine chance, right? I may not trust it 100%, but I'll take that over the odds that I have of this. But then respecting that there may be 35, 40-year-olds who say, I don't trust this. I would rather take my chances because my chance of dying from COVID is extremely low if I have no other conditions. And saying, all right, I'm going to give you the facts. I'm going to give you the information that's available, but I will still respect your decision because I understand where it's coming from. And as time passes, as things change and as people look and we get all the data that come out for people who are taking the vaccine now, there will be a point at which people say, well, now I'm more comfortable. I've seen, not in a lab setting, not from institutions I distrust, my trust has now been verified because I've seen how it played out in the world when we started vaccinating people. And so I think respect is really important up until that time, to really say, yes, here's the data we have, here's why people need to get vaccinated, especially if you're in the, in a group where you're susceptible to really bad outcomes. And then say, but I respect where you're coming from in the history that's led you to say, I'm not comfortable yet to take this vaccine.
Would you take the vaccine?
Ooh, not yet.
Okay.
I have to be honest.
For the reason you just said?
Probably for the reason I just said, and I'm 28 with extremely low, no, I don't have any other adverse conditions, so I would really want those to be going to the elderly first, and I don't think we're anywhere close to having given out.
Would your parents take the vaccine?
Say that.
Would your parents take? Would the affable, likable, and super cool Xavier take the vaccine?
Ooh, I think he would think twice too. He has more reason, I think, to distrust. I mean, he was born in Cuba and watched the government literally take over his entire country, put his parents into exile, and then say your kids can leave the country, but you can't. So I think when you've gone through that, you have to think twice before you just take something at face value. And to be fair, the United States government lost a lot of trust of Cubans themselves back in the day when they had promised aid and then did not deliver and said, no, I think we'll hold back.
Well said. Well said. I love this vulnerability here on the show. Dude, you are awesome. Alex Urpí, guy, CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Thursday, he's got a killer show. It's called Today y Mañana, 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille Network. My friend, what do you have in store for this fantastic show?
Oh, it's going to be great. So not only do we have local, we have Eddie K from Four Corners Real Estate Solutions. He's going to talk with us on our Mañana part. He's going to be, all right, what are we looking at in the housing market, interest rates, if there's anything you're going to want to know about things that are happening locally. He's a great guy to talk to, commercial and retail.
He's big time. He's a mover and shaker.
Oh, he is. He is huge. You're going to find everywhere you see that little, it's amazing how many times I'll like open up a brochure or from a nonprofit or be looking around nonprofit space and I see that little symbol. I'm like, Eddie K was here. Eddie K is putting his time and effort into really helping this grow. And then on the flip side, we have Robert Rodriguez. And this is, if you have not heard of this gentleman, he started in Texas, the first, I think, and one of the biggest investment banks owned by Hispanic. Wow. So, I mean, you're talking a guy who in an industry this was, I think, early 80s, in an industry in the early 80s where there was almost no Hispanics. I mean, you're talking finance, banking, investment. This gentleman, he decides, I'm going to go into this space. I, as a Hispanic, I'm going to enter this space where there are almost zero Hispanics and grow my company. And so I think it's going to be a great story for just really for everyone in the community, but also for Latinos to see, okay, here's how he did it. Here's how he penetrated an industry that had almost no Latino representation and grew a huge, I mean, he got to the point where he was being recognized by the state of Texas.
How'd you get this guest?
Connections.
That's amazing.
The Cubans through the Puerto Ricans through the Mexican Americans in Texas. So you go far enough and you'll reach another. What do they say? A 7? What is it like? You typically like a 7. You're 7 connections away from anyone.
Yeah. So it says 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah. With Latinos, it's like 2. You're 2 people away from another Latino. We know we have so many connections.
That is a great guest, dude. I cannot wait for Thursday.
I'm excited. I think there's so much to really unpack from him and say, because I think, there's traditional industries where Latinos have been when we come to this country. Things we start, ways to share our culture, ways to share our food. And it's going to be awesome, I think, really to encourage people. That's wonderful. If your dream is in an industry that there haven't been a lot of Latinos, that's okay too. Here's how you can get there. Here's how you can penetrate. And don't be shied away with people saying, well, that's not a typically Latino industry. This guy went into one with 0 and came out of it successfully.
I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. I think you and your family and your dad embody that as well. I mean, financial services, Latino. I mean, you don't see a lot of Latinos in financial services.
That is true. Thank you. I do appreciate that. And it's something you have to work hard towards to really say, hey, you know what, we're out there. We're there to be talked to. And I think it has a lot of benefits to being one of the few in the industry because, there's a lot of Latino clients out there, Latinos who need to have answers to financial questions, just like Americans. I mean, there's so many people that don't understand. Even native-born Americans, English speakers, don't understand basic financial questions because it's complicated stuff, and you don't want to worry about that. And so, I think it helps for Latinos to know that there's a place where this person comes from my culture. They understand
Trust.
Things that I've gone through. Yes, it's trust. It's deep down. It's all about
trust.
About trust.
Yeah, and when it comes to money, there's no more important quality, I think, than trust with the person you work with, especially when you're busting your tail earning it like we all are doing. This guy is trustworthy. His business is trustworthy, Emergent Financial Services. His dad, Xavier, is trustworthy, and I love his dad. Can you give your dad some props to me? Is he there?
Oh, he's working.
All right. After the call, tell him I said hello.
I will. No, he is the best. He is funny. He is hardworking. He is a story. I have to say, he is like a story box. You cannot. There's so many stories in there that you can just keep pulling out, and he has the ability to tell them, the joy of telling them. So there's always something new that can come out of my dad.
I totally agree. That's why I totally agree. Watch the show on Thursday and you will see what he means. Dude, you killed it. Alex, thank you. We will be watching closely at 10:15. Fantastic show lined up, my friend.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it. Seeing everybody there.
You have a good one.
You too.
All right, Alex. Thank you. Vanessa Parkhill, hello. Quentin Beckham, hello. Della Bennett, hello. Nancy Collins, hello. 5 states watching the program on the heat map, hello. Joshua Scott, welcome to the broadcast. Keith, thank you for sharing. Margie Shepard, Eddie Smith, hello. That's the program. Couple of items out of the notebook quickly. Friday, February 12th, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., we're going to do a live 12-hour telethon with the mission of raising $150,000 to purchase a piece of property on 10th Street in the city of Charlottesville. I would love to raise that $150,000 through donations of $50 by 3,000 people in Central Virginia. If 3,000 people give $50, the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust will have $150K, and then this land trust can buy a piece of property off 10th Street in the city of Charlottesville, and by the end of 2021, construction and potentially coming to market with 5 affordable housing units for Charlottesville and Central Virginia to enjoy. Anytime you donate, if you donate $50 to this campaign, this 12-hour telethon on the 12th of February, whenever you drive by these 5 units of affordable housing, you can say, I contributed to build these 5 units for someone in Charlottesville, for a family in Charlottesville. Never in the history of Charlottesville, Virginia, have we crowdsourced the purchase of land in the city to build affordable housing on it. It's never been done in the history of Charlottesville. We're going to do it on the I Love CVille Network on Friday, February 12th. And I will not accept, I can't, or we will not meet this goal, or it's not going to happen as an answer. If anyone comes with any of those words, or any of the words that are associated with those words, and they put it anywhere in the vicinity of me, I will snap and lose my temper at you. We're not going to say I can't or it won't get done. You will feel my rage if you do that. So, $150K on Friday, February 12th, Really, I'd like to raise $300,000 in this 12-hour telethon. And if we raise $300,000 in this 12-hour telethon, the land trust can buy a second piece of property off Carlton and Monticello. So that would be 2 pieces of property, and then the land trust legitimately can bring 11 individual units of affordable housing tied to area median income to market in a city that's turning into a white rich playground right before our very eyes. Get your iPhone out. What are you waiting for? And put it in your calendar, please. Please. I'm going to ask for your help. And I also will put my money where my mouth is and do some donations too. 3,000 people doing $50 each, or 6,000 people doing $50 each, and you have minimum 5 units of affordable housing, 11 units if we could raise 300K. That's special. And it's never been done in the history of the town. That's special. All right, I'm out of here. Thank you for joining us. It's the I Love CVille Show. You guys have a good afternoon.